So let's look at how we can compare and order integers. Now, the word integers themselves refers to a series of number lines that involves whole numbers that can be positive and negative. Okay, and on my bottom here of the page, and I'll have this on all the pages of this slide, I've got a series of integers from negative 13 all the way to positive 13. And in this case, I've ordered them, I've used a horizontal scale, so it's the negatives are going to be to the left, the positives are to the right. And this is very important. This is an agreed upon method of how we order numbers. However, we could also order them vertically, and I'll show you an example of that in a moment. But integers, they're negative numbers and they're positive numbers. Now, negative numbers are very, very important to us, okay? Because when we're dealing with negatives, it often refers to, direction and size. So, for example, I like to think bank accounts is the big obvious one here. Okay, bank accounts can have positive balances, which means that you own money, and they can have negative balances, which means that you owe money. Own's probably not the best word for the when you're in a positive value, you have money in the bank. When you're in a negative value, you owe them money. Okay, you've loaned money from the bank. However, they exist in many, many different places, and what's important to note about them is they exist with direction. Okay. Now, we often think about positive numbers in terms of gains, increases, profits, things like that. We can think about them as wins, all right? When we have a win, we have a plus one. When we have a loss, we might go backwards, all right? So it's sort of a negative one. Hence the reason why we have direction to them, okay? So when we have gains, they tend to move to the right over here, wherever that gain was from. You know, you might have been, if we think back to our bank account sort of situation, you might have been in debt. Let's say you were at -5 in debt and you had a gain, all right? And that gain was $5. Okay, that gain would move you to the right $5. What that gain doesn't necessarily mean is you have $5, all right? Your result is actually 0 here. Okay, so this is a gain of +5. Okay, but depending on where you started from will depend where you finish. Okay, now negative numbers they have opposites to it. Okay, they are the opposite in this problem that we've got here. So if we were to lose $5, we would move backwards in here, and essentially it's its opposite. Okay, you can see they've got the same size, the same length. All right, so +5 is the opposite to -5. But when we're talking about a horizontal scale, gains move to the right, or addition essentially moves to the right, and losses or subtractions move to the left. Now, we can think about this in terms of vertical scales as well, and we often see vertical scales, all right? So a horizontal number scale, it's very important that it's horizontals left to right, that we have our negative numbers to the left, our positive numbers to the right. When we're dealing with vertical scales, our negative numbers need to be to the bottom, our positive numbers need to be to the top. Now, the 0 is often a reference point. Now, depending what we're talking about, you know, when we're talking about with finance, our reference point was 0 being that we didn't have any money and we didn't owe any money. And then negatives meaning that we owe, we've taken a loan, and positives meaning that we've put money and we've invested. Now, we always have a reference point. Sometimes our reference point might be the surface of a lake, for example, all right? Anything above the lake will be a number above, whether that's meters, that's centimeters, whatever the units is. Anything below will be a negative number because it has direction. Okay, now we can compare the locations of different places. So the fisherman's location we've put at 2 on our scale here, and the hook of our fisherman is at -6. And we can compare them. We can sit there and say, well, is our fisherman above or below the hook? All right, and we can see clearly our fisherman is above the hook. So we could say that this value of our fisherman is greater than this value of the hook. How do we write that? Well, we would say that the value of the fisherman, that 2, is greater than the value of the hook, which is -6. So that +2 is bigger than -6. And these symbols you may or may not have seen at this point, but essentially they are greater than or less than symbols. The open end points to the side that is larger than the other one. Okay, now this is very important because -6, you sort of look at it and go 6, that's a bigger number than 2. However, we're saying that 2 is more positive than -6. Okay, it exists above -6. If we're looking at this scale, all right, +2 is much better than -6 in terms of money, okay, because this means you've got $2 versus you owe $6, all right, but it's more to the right. It's more positive than that value, okay? Now, this is very, very important because if we're dealing with finance, all right, and we're looking at two values, let's say that you were at -$12 over here. All right, let's just do dollar signs as well. All right, and you're comparing it to a debt of -$8, okay? Well, what's more debt? Okay, what's a greater value? Well, we would say that -8 is greater than -12. We would say -8 is greater than -12. Well, that's interesting because 12 is a larger number than 8. However, -8 is more positive than -12. So that's the reason we say it's greater. Okay, and that's very important when we start ordering numbers and think about the number line as a whole. So, things to note from this, all right? Number lines, we use these to assist our understanding of it. When we increase numbers, it becomes more positive. If we're dealing with a horizontal number line, that means it moves to the right. If we're dealing with a vertical number line, it means that it moves up, okay? If we're dealing with a decrease, it means it moves to the left. It becomes more negative, moves to the left on a horizontal. It moves down on a vertical number line. Okay, I'm going to be dealing with more horizontal number lines from here on out than vertical, but do understand that these do exist vertically speaking as well. So how do we do it? Well, if we want to increase -2 by 7, an increase means that it moves to the right. We need to look at a -2 on our number line, and we need to move it to the right 7 places. So that's 2 to 0, and 7 will be here. Okay, so that's 7 places to the right, and we've increased it by 7, which means our result is 5. Okay, so a movement to the right by 7 is 5. If we decrease, well, decrease means to move to the left. We're going to decrease -1, so -1 being our starting point, to the left 5 places. So it means that we arrive at -6. Okay, so that's how we decrease. Now we can think of these problems as an addition or a subtraction problem. So for example, if we had -6 and we want to add 10 to it, addition is increasing. Okay, so we're going to increase -6 by 10. So what we need to do is we need to find -6 on our number scale, and we need to move -6 10 spots to the right, which means that it arrives at 4. So what we can see is -6 plus 10 arrives at +4. And that's how we increase -6 by 10. It's just another way to think about that problem. Okay? So, to summarize, number lines, they can exist on horizontal and vertical planes. When they're horizontally speaking, our negative numbers are always to the left. Our positive numbers are always to the right. Okay, vertically, it will be the negative numbers down low, positive numbers up high. All right, when we increase the positivity about it. It means it either goes up, vertically speaking, or to the right when we're dealing with horizontal. Okay, when we decrease, that's the opposite. It moves to the left. When we're dealing with horizontal, it becomes more negative, or it goes down when we're dealing with vertical. Okay?